Welcome to Berkeley on this beautiful day. My name is Mark Richards. I am the Dean for Mathematical and Physical Sciences at Berkeley, but I'm also a geophysicist myself, so I'm doing double duty here. This is really quite an extraordinary occasion. No secret about the fact that some of this is motivated by the recent terrible events in Japan, but also by the opportunities that we will be telling you about and you'll be hearing about today. This is the Earthquake Early Warning Summit, and I want to acknowledge the three principal people who have organized this event right off. John Vidali from the University of Washington, Tom Heaton from Caltech, and Richard Allen from Berkeley. And I wanted to make those acknowledgments right up front to let you know that this is the entire West Coast seismological community represented here. You can tell who the scientists are. They're less well-dressed for the most part. So we have quite a mixture of people. We also, of course, have many of you guests who were not here yesterday for the scientific sessions from major corporations in the West Coast, public utilities, government, U.S. Geological Survey, and so forth. This may even be an historical meeting in the sense of the broad base of stakeholders who are present here. There's no doubt that earthquakes are in the public imagination and mind right now. The half-life of public awareness of earthquakes tends to be about a month after events happen, but we've had a lot going on from Haiti to the Great Chilean earthquake last year, a number of other earthquakes this year, and of course the incredible event that just occurred in Japan. The purpose of this meeting is to begin a dialogue between the scientific community that knows how to do earthquake early warning and wants to prototype and develop those systems for public safety on the West Coast, and the stakeholders, people who would be using that information, because it's not just a provider and a user relationship. We really need to understand how this information might be used. And so to kick off this meeting, I want to dramatize this in a certain way. I want you all to imagine that 5 seconds from now you receive a highly credible warning of strong ground motion to arrive where you're sitting in your office or your workplace with your responsibilities, and you have 20 seconds until ground shaking starts that might seriously disrupt your business, injure or kill your employees, and cause major public disaster. I'm going to time that 20 seconds beginning right now. It's a very long 20 seconds. Think about what you would do. That's 10 seconds. That's an eternity, 20 seconds. Could be 5 seconds, could be 20 seconds, could be 1 minute, maybe even 2 minutes. If it's a tsunami warning, maybe several minutes. In that time, you might be thinking about shutting off critical valves in fabrication facilities or refineries, stopping BART trains or Caltrans trains, shutting down power supplies. It's your imagination, really, that we're seeking here. Perhaps more to the point, you might think of your children or your grandchildren in school, and that time allowing them to get under a desk or under a table and not be injured by falling ceiling tiles and light fixtures and shattered glass and bookcases. The experience in Japan, one of the somewhat untold stories in the experiences in Japan, is untold injuries and deaths were avoided by the existence of their warning system, not to mention property damage. And just to put this in perspective, in 1994 there was an earthquake that most of you are aware of, magnitude 6.7, I believe, in Northridge, with very large accelerations approaching 2 Gs. It caused about $20 billion of damage in Southern California. Only about 33 people were killed. It was an earthquake on what we call a blind thrust fault that was unmapped at the time, I believe. And the response in California was not dramatic. Building codes were improved, or at least adjusted in response to that earthquake. A year later, approximately a year later, there was an earthquake in Kobe, Japan, 1995, magnitude 7.2. Over 6,000 people were killed, over $100 billion in damage, or 2.5% of the Japanese GDP, to put that in perspective. That was on a strike-slip fault that when it happened, I was thinking the Hayward Fault right through the East Bay, which is perhaps our greatest single mapped hazard in California. On the other hand, the response in Japan was much more dramatic. Not only was much more energy put into earthquake engineering, but as one response was the very earnest development and heavy investment in earthquake early warning systems, which of course really paid off in the most recent event in Japan, even though there's still upwards of $300 billion from this most recent event in Japan, and of course over 10,000 casualties probably. The point of this meeting is that we can do that here on the west coast of the United States. Our hazards are heterogeneous. In California south of Mendocino, Cape Mendocino, we have faults like broken Kobe, the San Andreas Fault System. To the north, all the way to Vancouver, is a subduction zone capable of an event of the same magnitude of what just happened in Japan, along with the tsunami. So we want to engage you in this conversation. Now, there will be some discussion from Richard and his colleagues today about what a system like this would cost, and I'm not going to give you that number except in relative sense, which is it's about 1/50th of the cost of this East Bay span of the Bay Bridge. It's about 1/200th of the cost of the Northridge earthquake, or about 1/2000th of the cost of known damage already from Japan. And it's the stakeholders in this room. If you think about fractional cost and investments, the stakeholders in this room who are perhaps on the front edge of beneficiaries from what can be done with earthquake early warning, whether you operate a big fab facility for electronics, or whether you operate a refinery or public utilities, a nuclear power plant, etc. So yesterday we had a meeting among the scientists along the West Coast who are forefront in this field, and who, quite frankly, often are accustomed to competing with each other, but I think we all agree that this is time for some urgent collective action. And they have a program for you this morning of information and ideas. But the most important part of the meeting today is that we really seek your involvement. We want to create this two-way street in which we send you away from this meeting thinking about what you can do, what you can contribute, how you would use this information. You'll learn a lot today about how this information was used and what kind of planning was in place in Japan. And of course, we need your feedback on this, and ultimately we need support. I think it's no secret that ultimately the federal government has to build a system like this and accept the liability for warnings and so forth. But this constituency, the interaction between the scientific community and the major utilities, industries, and people who are responsible for public safety is what we're seeking here today. So without further